what personal qualities do you rely most on when the scrutiny, the stakes, and the stress get really, really high?
Hmm. That's a great question. I think if I was surprised by anything, and I get that question a lot, what was one thing that you may have been surprised about when you came into CalPERS? I think even though I worked in the Washington State Department of Retirement Systems, and we certainly watched and read about CalPERS every single day, until you actually sit in the seat, you you don't really have a comprehension of what that feels like day in and day out. Um, so for me, I think my upbringing has really helped me. I have pretty thick skin, and you might want to criticize me professionally, personally, whatever, and that has certainly happened. But I have enough confidence in myself. I have a board who's very supportive. That's critically important that the board be supportive of their CEO, and they've been supportive of me throughout my 9 years coming up in October. Um, but these are not easy jobs. The CEO and the CIO jobs are not easy. Not easy just because you're leading a complicated, complex organization and portfolio, but then you add in all of the public side of this,
Hmm.
where even on the political side, wanting to use CalPERS as an instrument to do something politically, whether that is the way that we invest, investments in certain countries, investments in certain assets, whether just allegations of things that are happening. So I came up with this whole myth busting approach. And I continue to do these myth busting town halls. And those are actually pretty fun for me to do. We started doing them with employees. We'll start doing those more on a,
That's pretty
external
cool.
basis with our members. But there's a lot of misinformation out about CalPERS. So I use every channel that I possibly can get to explain we're a pension fund. Right?
Hmm.
We are a pension fund. And the reason we get the attention that we get is the over $500 billion in assets that are
Hmm.
sitting in a portfolio. But again, those assets are set aside to pay the members' benefits. These are the contributions coming from the members, the contributions coming from the employers, and then the investment returns on those contributions. We are a pension fund. And to the extent that I can continue to pull us out of the political fray, that is my goal. That is my intention. And I don't shy away from taking people on if they're going to come in and make some misguided or misinformation and do a big old public quote in one of the, a Wall Street Journal or Bloomberg, then they have to understand we're going to respond to that with data, with facts, with information.
Yeah.
Information. We're going to be calm and pragmatic about it, but we're not going to sit back and let misinformation just sit out there. We have 2.4 million people who need to have the confidence in this system. And if we just sit back and take it, if you will. And so I'm a bit of a fighter. People people do recognize that I'm a bit of a fighter about these things. And I think, again, I think it just goes back to my childhood and just having to fight a little bit harder for things, or being bullied a little bit because of not having nice shoes or nice clothing, or whatever that might be. When I was a kid, I was able to compartmentalize. And the primary skill set that you better have as a
Hmm.
CEO, and not just the CEO of CalPERS, I think it's something that most CEOs, CIOs need to have, is the ability to compartmentalize. As some advice I had gotten back in 2018 when there was a bit of a personal attack on me, is that if you step away, if you cannot figure out how to continue to move forward and work on the strategies that you put out there, then they win. That criticism becomes fact because they win. So you cannot let people who are really trying to, again, I don't understand it. Why do you want to get in the way of a pension fund? But people who are trying to cause this pension fund to be seen in a more negative way,
Hmm.
you can't let them win. And if you can't compartmentalize and you let all of that stress and all of that anxiety and all of that personal, stuff that can happen, get in the way of forward momentum, then these are not the rules for you. So we spent a lot of time, because we've had a bit of turnover in our chief investment officer role. And so we spent a lot of time this last recruitment ensuring that we had someone who had that grit, who was a little bit fearless, had some experiences, like tested under pressure, tested, to see how they were going to respond. Did they really have the ability to compartmentalize? And we call it kind of thick skin, but you've got to be in a place where things just like move off of you. Like if it doesn't really matter,
Hmm.
and so do that analysis. Does this matter? Does the person who's making the allegation, right? Are they credible? Right. Make that assessment, but make that assessment quickly and keep moving. Because if you don't have that, again, that forward movement, then these critics are going to win. And that's the last thing that I want to have happen.
You've reached the end of this clip, but the story is not over. To watch the full episode, follow this link. Go on. You can do it.